From nothing, this art is born. Incredibly, this very interesting, unusual art, it all just comes from where? And this is an improvisation, my friends. Welcome back, Artist Journal, July 26, 2024. Broadcasting from a cloudy Berlin, Germany. My name's Adrian Pocobelli. Soldier of the Night, as my improvisation continues. I don't even know what these words mean that keep showing up, but I just kind of vocalize it. It's a huge mystery. Actually, I had that daring episode, at least in my mind, called I Said It, But It Wasn't Me. You know, where thoughts come from and the whole vocalization of thought. And really, I mean, didn't Lou Reed have an album Between Thought and Expression? I think there was an album called that. You know, it's quite a mystery. And I think wrapped up in that mystery is inspiration, I suspect. That's where my researches would go. But the problem is, like, let's say I was to actually, finally, let's say I was actually, I did a master's in English, but before that, because I was studying a lot of ancient philosophy, I was thinking of studying philosophy. And what I wanted to study, my topic of interest, is inspiration, would have been inspiration. But in a sense, I think it's, retrospect wise, what I had done, which is not pursued that. And of course, the professor moved off, so circumstances really out of my hand. Wise by accident, we might say. But the problem with those kinds of researches is it almost like, where do you go from there? Like, how do you research that? Thought and expression, I guess you'd look at like some neuroscience, but then what are you doing, in the Greeks? Right? Then you might as well study neuroscience, and then maybe you bring in some stuff. There is a famous book, just finally on this. I do not have it on the bookshelf. Many of you will know it. It was like a cult book. The Victor Acevedos of the world will definitely know it. Julian Jaynes, The Origin of Consciousness and the Bicameral Mind. And I think a lot of you, there are some of you who that'll just, ring a bell in your head, probably if you're a little older. And that also, that book, again, when we get to this thought and expression, what is consciousness is almost where we're going with that whole discussion. And maybe that is the bigger issue. And inspiration maybe folds into that larger issue of really what is consciousness, which finally, as far as I can tell, the scientists are still trying to corner consciousness in the sense that they're still trying to say something definite about it. You see the, what do they call it? The pan. We need to open this up. I actually wrote an essay on this. I think it needs some work, this essay. I think it was Rural Idol might have posted it like a few months ago. They're trying to say what I can say before we get into this. Beautiful, super interesting, unique work by Santiago. They're trying to pin down consciousness, science. And the problem is, at the core, the difficulty of science trying to say things about consciousness is consciousness, it's hard to put a number or a measure on consciousness. How do you measure it? Right? Is it brain activity? Is brain activity consciousness? Maybe. Maybe that's the best way you could do it, is brain waves. Right? Because I guess when the brain goes down, then there's no more consciousness. But I don't remember any of the scientists who are trying to tackle it talking about brain waves. All to say, how do you measure consciousness? How do you measure a thought? Right? How do you do that? And science, I would argue, science is just an insufficient tool. Insufficient. It can do things. Brainwaves are interesting. Neuroscience, I mean, it could probably tell us a ton about consciousness, but can it tell us everything? And I would argue it can't, which is finally, I did not plan another improvisation here. Your radical art show online here which is ultimately why I think pataphysics, Jarry, a proto-surrealist, his kind of, I think, I put joke in question mark because I don't think he was joking. I think he was half joking. But when he said pataphysics is the science, I actually think he wasn't just, he was half joking, is how I would put it. Because it actually makes a lot of sense. As he put it, that which is like metaphysics is super induced, I think is the word he used, over physics, right? Meta meaning beyond the physics. Okay, pataphysics, as metaphysics is above physics, pataphysics is above metaphysics. The science of imaginary solutions. And I argue in this essay, which I need to revise, I argue that ultimately we need a pataphysical approach to consciousness, and that all these scientists trying to hit away and, get the definition, to define, so to speak, consciousness using scientific tools of measurement will always be insufficient. So we actually need a kind of qualitative science. And so enter pataphysics. Anyways, how are we doing here? 6 minutes. Let's go. We are trying hilariously as ever to shorten this show. It's funny, I was out yesterday. I was at the Hamburger Bahnhof. They have a weekly kind of DJ thing. I call it an easy Thursday night. It's just kind of fun. They're a big outdoor party, and it's just a fun thing to do on a Thursday, in Berlin. Free, right? Yeah, I was with a couple of German friends. They're like, hilarious is a great word. I guess I use it often enough. It kind of is a good kind of filler word. Anyways, let's continue. So Santiago, putting out something pretty radical here. It almost looks like a combination of several of Santiago's works, but then adjusted. You can see the AI, I believe AI, as you see here, if you kind of look up close, I think I can probably go closer here for you. These look like AI brush strokes for those that have ever tried to get oil brush strokes with AI, but beautifully done, or who have ever looked. Look at this work. I mean, look at this work. And even the little bit of digital. So who knows? Like, what I suspect happened here, and I hazarding a guess, is Santiago took a bunch of almost random works of his, or abstracts, threw them into the big mixer, the blend, or whatever. I have no idea. And all of a sudden he got a wild render of his older works almost acting as a kind of passe-partout, or what's another word for this? Passe-partout is the thing that surrounds the frame. It's a French word. It's an important word. I think some people in America, North America, would call it a mat, right, in the frame. There's almost like this passe-partout or mat of other works that are familiar-looking works of Santiago's. And then here, again, we see and again, this was, I believe, in a lot of these works, it uses collage. So it's just keeping going down this kind of AI rabbit hole and then turning into painting. Just super interesting. I mean, it has to be recognized, right? I mean, this is one of the most original abstracts I've seen in a while, is how I feel about it. I mean, it's kind of just, I'd almost just call it more mysterious than anything, an enigma of sorts. This is on super rare, and it's got a reserve of 0.7. Of course, Santiago just making a huge sale of half an ETH, I think yesterday. Santiago's doing fabulous. If you look at the activity, Santiago, all that work he puts in, which seems like 24 hours a day, I feel like everybody who's watching the show would likely know, and if you don't, if you're kind of new to the blockchain scene, a very presence, we might say, a very present presence on X. And I've been on a few spaces, really cool, nice guy out of Uruguay, as I was corrected on at one point by a friend. So here's the title, 7 Overlap Visions of a Necessary Gesture. And I actually asked Santiago at one point if he uses AI to make these titles. He claimed no, which was super impressive. Of course, I think he used to write poetry, I think. So, I mean, really impressive titles. a prolificness that is unusually high, and so which again kind of lends credibility. Here, this is super rare with their beautiful new detail page here. A collage of AI outputs, Inkscape, GIMP, sources as paintings, digital paintings, AI outputs, and a massive 8,000 by 8,000 pixels. So just a huge work here from Santiago on super rare, just listed. So 153 megabytes. So very cool. And while we're on Santiago, just some other amazing works put out basically the same day. What is this? Let's look at the activity. July 23rd. Okay, so a couple of days ago. And then here, July 25th. Again, we see just very interesting compositions. Playing with the vector, uses Illustrator, right? Looks like putting the whole thing at a certain point into Illustrator, trying different tools, different effects, although this doesn't really look like Illustrator, this copy and paste stars. And then here you have like this dragging sample brush, and then here you have a window into some other pieces. Very interesting crops of, I don't know if crops is the right word, but collage. Like really separating elements. It's like he's taking out elements from previous works, let's say, and then dumping them in, pasting them in, Control V. Here maybe you Control V a few times, right? And then mixing it all together. And even this great stuff here. Yeah, and you see up close, and beautiful color, I might add here. Even these kind of, I think there was a space where someone was asking, it was like one of the promo for the space was, why does Santiago use cream-colored backgrounds? I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear his answer. I suspect it's probably a very practical, aesthetic choice, but who knows? And anyways, great big shapes in the background, and this great contrast that we have here finally, with these kind of stringy lines, almost like a pen over top of this collage-like atmosphere here, for lack of better terms. Look at how beautiful it is. This is on, this is from the series Solid Vapor Goblin. This is on objects, so super multi-chain here. Of course, super rare using Ethereum. And here, already selling 3 at a healthy 15 Tezos edition of 10. Beautiful work. We have others. This is just put on X. I don't think it's been minted anywhere. But you see again these huge AI experiments. Like one has to imagine AI was involved here. Who could make this without AI? So AI collage, likely exactly what we saw there on Super Rare. And here's another one which kind of looks like from the same piece or just a different rendering, right? Using the AI. So one of the most exciting, a very painterly use of AI, like what's kind of interesting in my own mind as I look at Santiago's work with the AI, incorporating AI, AI is a tool, as I like to say, is weirdly, like, I don't necessarily think of Santiago as a quote-unquote AI artist, a term that often gets put on artists who make a lot of AI work. Like, it seems like it's just being used, it's incorporated, it's being blended together, there is collage, but it's very much just a tool in the toolbox. As I called a show, I think, earlier this week or late last week, it is not the be-all, end-all. So really an augmentation of sorts of the artist's hand and capabilities, interestingly. Rather than, say, as we saw, I think, starting with more AI last episode, right? Inigo Bilbao, who we heard from awesomely, with raw AI, which is also, incredibly interesting, as we saw, the insanely beautiful result. We're going to see actually kind of a physical portrayal. I'm not sure if it's a real physical. We'll see in a second. So in a few tabs here, because I didn't actually focus too much on it last time, and I wanted to. Look at these great drips here, too. These simulated drips, right? Just beautiful. Super interesting, these perfect curves. We are in the land of digital art here, aren't we? And finally, I also admire in Santiago's work, July 25th, like you can tell he's making like minimum 10 works a day. He's probably making a couple of hundred because you can with AI. And then selecting some of his favorites. I don't know, but it seems like that's possible. This is edgy from a aesthetic. Like, look at the color. Like, really pushing things, constantly pushing. Like, we've been following Santiago's work from, very, very early in this show. And, it keeps evolving. It's not like it's a constant process and this kind of organic, this organism, so to speak. It's almost got a life of its own. And now Santiago, back almost to inspiration, is just a tool of whatever this organism is at this point. It's overtaken him, to a certain degree. So it's taken on a life of its own, shall we say. So, good night, Lord. So, again, and we see here other kinds of Santiago works being put in. Remember these? That was a whole phase with almost like the pixelated abstracts, and then he puts out like 30 or 40, maybe more. And then when you see that many, you go, okay, like this is a solid process, right? And in a sense, that's the name of the game. Like, what is an artist? We're back to this whole discussion. You're basically putting together a kind of process that ultimately you're going, look, I can apply this here like Warhol. I can do this and I don't even need to think about it. I just go into action and I have this, this kind of magic, mix of things, mingling of ideas, technical things, again, a process, a techne, we could argue, a way of making things. We're going to go back to that word later on. And this is the result, so interesting, not all of this will be minted, but just really interesting, experimenting constantly. So finally, we had LA Survey, of course, my guilty pleasure X profile account that I love to follow here. Many longtime viewers will be familiar with LA Survey. Who should be running a newspaper of his own, frankly. He's constantly, he's putting in more interesting quotes than a lot of reporters, interestingly, or links, I should say. Now, I only brought this one up because I was like, gosh, that looks like Santiago, doesn't it? So here's Alien Survey. Had to search to find out where this is happening at Crystal Bridges. Spacemakers charts the influence of native art on American abstraction by Alexander Breyer Marr. And this is Art in America, and I just thought, it's kind of funny, isn't it? Within the context of our discussion of Santiago. Like, you could say, wherever this comes from, and the artist here is Steve Wheeler, Woman Eating a Hot Dog. You could say, even the title, it feels like it's in a, you could line it up in a similar tradition, in a sense of abstracts, like this kind of busy abstract. Right? It's a very similar kind of piece, interestingly. So this is from 1950 to 75. I guess they're not even sure. Steve Wheeler, the artist, and of course going into some indigenous art. Very cool work there. 19th century. This almost looks like it was made today. This is from the 19th century? Wow. From the Spacemakers, Indigenous Expression, and a New American Art. So super interesting. But it's always fun to look at, what's going on in 20th century painting in comparison to this digital art scene that we're looking at here. Because you start, you could start to, just as a matter of exercise, you could start, compare and contrast what I just showed you with a Santiago, and you could probably find quite a few similarities. Big thank you to everybody who showed up, to Lily Illo on the space on Wednesday. Thank you to Rune Toon. Thank you to everybody who showed up. Very interesting space. Really just sharing the process and how, one of the big takeaways was how Lily is really focused. She's not trying to get to the next AI software that comes out, the hot new software. She's actually very interested. She's very interested in kind of early versions, as far as I can tell, of Midjourney, like a very specific version saying how her DALL-E 2 credits are almost gone and she can't put any more because they're basically deprecating the software. What digital artist, I'd argue, can't relate to this? That the software you're using to make a certain thing goes out of date and you can't even use it anymore. kind of interesting. And I was bringing this up in the space. Like, I think it kind of, interestingly, the phenomenon that are associated with that software, say early version of like DALL-E 2 in Lily Illo's case, it'll actually kind of cap the works that can be made in whatever way that DALL-E 2, the qualities that DALL-E 2 gives to a work, which I think is kind of interesting. It kind of does, to a certain degree, cap that era, I use in quotes, of AI art, or at least that kind of style, which is kind of interesting to me. So anyways, great space available in the feed. And if you don't know who it is, or if you don't know Lily Illo's work, who of course I follow, that's Glitch on X. She talks a lot about the latent space as well. She's also making physical versions of these chairs. Interestingly, 30 centimeters high. Here's a beautiful work by her. Again, a product of the AI getting this wild composition, very kind of modern art looking, almost post-World War II art looking composition, breaking the narrative space and embracing it. Final insight, one of the big takeaways as well, how AI can expand your sense, your aesthetic sense, right? Your appreciation of aesthetics, your way of working and what is possible by giving you these results and then going, you know what? I accept this bottom blue area, right? That's half the game, you could argue, in visual art, is what do you accept, and then and kind of trying to break through to new aesthetic kind of expressions of aesthetics and understanding. Back to this idea of art as a kind of knowledge, right? On our wild journal here that we do online. Thank you everybody for all your support and everything. And thank you everybody for the support on this work here. As I continue to make my art, I've been talking about putting something on Fake Whale. Thank you, Fake Whale, for the invitation. And put it in the art market here, Psychopath. This is part of the Promoted Stories series. And Think You Know How to Spot a Psychopath, Think Again. And it's kind of, you know what I love about the subject of this, and here I have all these digital renderings, so to speak, over top of one another, selecting, blah, blah, blah. You know what I love about this? Who's the psycho? Is it the person at the door, or is it the person arriving? That's kind of one of my, it's not clear, is it? So I kind of like that. So anyways, thank you all these wonderful people here, these wonderful collectors. I sent one to Waffles and Ilay for all the gifts and the support over the many weeks, months, and turning into years here. Let us bring this up. And so we have more comments here. Let us go. And okay. Kyle Flemmer, thanks for sharing my nautical works today, Adrian. That was rad. Yeah, it's tempting almost to start with a work like that with our big metaphor of the ship that we have here. So rad work, Kyle Flemmer. The video glitches are looking spectacular. Whatever texture you're getting there, like, it's beautiful. It's absolutely, it's so rich. Those McDonald's works, really nice work coming from Kyle Flemmer on, I think mostly, if not exclusively, I don't know if it's exclusively Object or Tezos, but putting out a lot of awesome work there. Here's Tom Bombattle, awesome to hear from you, just a rad pixel artist. Okay, RuneTune is back with actually the Cant comes back. We're not going to spend, or I'm going to try not to spend a ton of time on it like the last two episodes. I feel like we've given it a lot, but let's see. First of all, regarding PNGs versus JPEGs, I didn't understand the value of this difference until I experienced quality loss when minting my own artwork. Yeah, and that'll happen using JPEG. With my GIF works, for instance, I have to export the layers from Procreate as PNGs and then bring them into Photoshop to export as GIF, of course. Because if you export from Procreate as JPEGs and then you try and turn it into a GIF, well, then you're going to have something a bit more glitchy and experimental, right? So, exactly. The PNG preserves the color and the sharpness. Again, it's lossless of the image, and Photoshop allows you to adjust the settings on your GIF before exporting, whereas Procreate does not. Yeah, so this is an interesting point, too. Like, if I'm using Procreate or another digital art software, I will often, usually if it's a decent one, or if it's like a drawing program, almost always they let you export as a PSD. and I will do that. And then I'll put it on my computer. Then I open it in Photoshop, and I do what I call, the mastering, so to speak. So yeah, so that's sounds like you're doing a similar thing. Super helpful. Okay, so yeah, so the PN or export as a PNG. I'll even go a step further back where it's just the PSD if possible. And then you kind of do what you want from Photoshop, which is more, again, the mastering studio, so to speak. Super helpful for anyone looking into making GIFs from Procreate. Now, I thought Procreate, I guess it's their other software that has animations. And yeah, so I thought you could make GIFs from Procreate, but I don't do it. So interesting. So tip there for those in Procreate. Sabato, Poco not going gently into that good night, referring, I assume, to our Kant discussion. Now here, we actually have quite a bit more from Runtune. Yeah, the Kant thing requires actual conversation. And yeah, fair enough. Not texting back and forth. But anyways, we don't need to talk about him anymore. Perhaps I'll put together a thread one day. And let's continue. Just one last thing. Okay, but wait. When I interpret the text, I keep in mind that the ideas are not rigid or fixed, referring, I assume, to Kant. And I guess it's in the Theory of Judgment, I believe, is the book or the chapter. It seems like you don't like how things don't add up because you read the text as meaning that the thing, the object itself, is either art or non-art, and not that it can be both. So I guess this idea that, well, this is where I start to, again, what are we talking about? Because what's the point of having a distinction between art and non-art if the object in question can be both? So again, I'm kind of back to, it doesn't add up to me, for me, so far. I mean, I feel like I have a general sense, very, superficial sense of what Kant is discussing here, which I ultimately think is a romantic kind of view of art. And again, going just purely on something like discussing art without examples. And I think I understand why. I was thinking about this. I was like, Kant probably, to be charitable, he probably just wanted something just pure, almost like a scientific philosophy. But instead of using the scientific method, as we were discussing earlier in this program, and measuring, but using pure logic, reason, and how far can we go with our own reasoning ability? Kind of as we were seeing in the first line of the, I think, A Critique of Pure Reason. I think considered his, magnum opus, so to speak, where he's saying we have the unique ability to reason, human reasoning, but to ask questions that reason is insufficient for, right? Which, is quite profound. But again, I call into question the whole process, philosophical process, and it brings me back to, I kind of agree with Socrates, let's start with basic ideas and then test those ideas, and then we continue, rather than a 500 page answer, and then we're supposed to make something of this, but it has its value. Again, it's important to be humble here. Let's continue. Which I suppose is a matter of interpretation when reading, the way that for me, it wasn't adding up and reading the meaning. But I read Kant's assertions not as something that is fixed. So, right, again, I think it's back to this idea that something can be both art and non-art at the same time. But if that's the case, then what happens? What is the point of the distinction? I guess it's the way you're looking at it. Perhaps, but that's not what I gathered from what we read last episode. That wasn't my interpretation of what Kant was saying. And that was ChatGPT, which is a whole other, point of failure, perhaps, in our discussion, right? Duchamp's urinal is either a urinal or art, but it's also both. I suppose, but when we're saying Duchamp's urinal, yes, okay, sure, on one category way of looking at, one way of seeing it is, yes, this is a urinal turned on its side, very importantly, and signed. Okay, so alchemically transformed, one could argue, into an art piece. So you can see it as a urinal on its side with some markers, a marker put on it, but you can also see it as art. But again, it's like, I don't even know what we're saying then. What's the, if it's both, then it's not like, so again, I'm kind of just, this is too convoluted for me, is just from my personal, and it could be a personal limitation. And continuing, lol, 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 Adrian, you're supporting Kant's ideas even when you're critiquing them. So we're kind of like, so, I challenge you, Runetune, since you brought it up 3 times, you have to do the explaining now. Because you're saying it's so obvious here. Ha 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 ha, look at how you don't even understand the first thing about it. You're going to have to, I think it's on you now. It's on you to explain this at this point. The sublime is that magic that is real and experienced when viewing art. Yeah, but the way that that Kant defines the sublime, this awful and terrible and, I get it. But what I see here is it's very kind of, again, for me, it's like when I read Kant's definition of the sublime, I don't think necessarily, I think that's kind of a way of framing that magic that I don't agree with semantically. Let's put it that way. So I just define things differently from my perspective. And again, the sublime, it's a very 19th century, early 19th century term. Like there's a whole bunch of connotations to the sublime. But I don't really use the word sublime that much unless it's just something that is just truly awe-inspiring and, shocking, astonishing, right? That is otherworldly, but that's not necessarily what I get when I'm, maybe a hint of that, but again, semantically, that's kind of, I just feel like it's insufficient, shall we say, kind of a verbal skeleton or verbal dress for this, whatever this thing is. I prefer almost alchemical, transmutation, transformation, mystery, enigma, right? Thanks for all the philosophy talk. I love it. Sorry to make this show super long. All good. Thank you for provoking another very interesting discussion, Runetune, and I say that genuinely. I would say here, though, I think you're going into territory that you're going to have to start explaining things, though. I mean, you can't just throw tomatoes at the show, so to speak, and I know you're doing it in all good discussion. But now I think I've spent 40 minutes, now another probably 10. And of a lot of people's time, too. I think it's incumbent on you to, but maybe this is your explanation. But I think, again, if you have a very good understanding of what's going on here, and if I'm completely off, I think you should put it together, at this point. That is my take. Also, hilariously, last episode, we got a late comment from Sabato. Einstein on the Beach mentioned. It's one of my favorite pieces of 20th century classical music. Indeed. Very accessible, actually, if you're open-minded to that kind of work. Especially the 1979 recording. I wonder if that's the super famous one that they had the 4 CD set of, or is it 8 CDs? Maybe it's 4. I can't remember. I don't know how musicians can sit there for 4 hours playing variations of arpeggios. Pretty incredible. Sometime at mind-boggling speeds. It blows my mind every time I listen to it. Indeed, and that last track, is one of my favorite tracks of all time. But also, I haven't met many people who can stand listening to it. It's pretty tricky. It's not something you listen to every day, especially in Disc 2 or whatever, where it's almost maddening. I highly recommend the show if it ever comes to town. I think they still tour once in a while. Of course, Philip Glass still alive, as well as did Robert Wilson pass away? I'm not sure. I don't think Kant would be able to handle it. He would probably cry and get a headache and have to leave. Love your take on Kant, by the way, and I think you hit the nail on the head in refuting his take on beauty and aesthetic judgment. Can you really believe someone's take on beauty as a universal category if they've never procreated or gotten in the experienced sexual intercourse? I don't think you can. There's something kind of, exactly, I'm kind of back to... I think I relate more to the cave painters, these, very ancient, archaic people, with the going for the hunt than I would with Kant as far as on the art side of things. And I think, again, I'm kind of back to, fire, getting dirty, hunting for your, that's a bit more kind of what I can relate to from an art perspective and life, right? And it's almost about this. It's like the experience of life of a hunter-gatherer from, 80,000 years ago, I almost relate to more than the guy who, as far as I understand, didn't leave like a 20-kilometer radius his entire life. Where's that experience of life? Very interesting. Thank you for the comment there. And thank you everybody else. We read these last episode. Also, finally, on on Twitter, Inigo Bilbao, of course, the artist of this magnificent work here. This magnificent, again, it's challenging it's tempting to call it masterpiece. Sold for only 350 Tezos. If I had the Tezos, I didn't have the Tezos, but I couldn't believe it. It was available for like 6 hours. That blows my mind, actually. So it did sell. Many thanks for your amazing review, Pocobelli. I really appreciate it. And many congrats for your channel. Thank you, Inigo. Really awesome to hear from artists like yourself on the show. So just fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for the comments, and congratulations yourself on your incredible work. Ilya, we all wish only the best things for you, dear Pocobelli. Thank you a lot for what you are doing. It's an absolute pleasure. It is, one of the joys, if not, one of the main joys of my life is doing this show and having this conversation with all of you. So thank you, Ilya. Marco, Adrian must thank you for the sheer pleasure that's listening to you reasoning and breaking things down. Totally appreciate that, Marco. I'm not sure if I've heard from Marco before, so it's wonderful to hear from you. Marco. Kells, nice one, Adrian. Love the deep dive on Kant and appreciate the effort you put into it. Thank you, Kells. And Kells, of course, just put out another video. I still need to send Kells, I haven't forgotten, the login to the Substack, which we're going to kind of resurrect a little bit as a place, the Pixel Network, so to speak, for people to put their videos. I was talking to an artist, I don't want to name him, who is also considering it. Ed Marola has put out work there, so it's kind of all in the... the vision is there. So I am still on it, Kels. Thank you for the comment. Rural Idol, arguing the semantics of art with ChatGPT feels like only seems to underline the limits of the learning language models, or LLMs, or the AI. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Like, maybe it's an unfair way that I had of dealing with Kant, is saying, hey, ChatGPT, what about this? And then... But that being said, there's probably so much that has been written on Kant. I have a feeling it's not that far. But I think it's a very fair, and actually I'd even go so far as to say important comment that you're making here, Rural. Definitely some food for thought these past couple of episodes. I felt quite wounded by your passing dismissal of my namesake, Dylan Thomas. And so... yeah, and with that, I mean, some people, again, like Kant, there's probably way bigger experts on Dylan Thomas than me, so take my opinion on Dylan Thomas with a grain of salt. Just sharing my impressions in this journal here. But thank you for the comment. Juan Pez, awesome to hear from you. And Marco, recant, art has no utility. There's this awesome line I often quote by architect Oscar Niemeyer. Quote, when a form produces beauty, it takes on one of the most important functions in architecture. So, exactly. So if I understand this right, it's like beauty itself is a function. So again, and to be fair, even to Hegel and Kant, we have to remember that these works were translated. One of the reasons, Hegel can be so difficult, we have to assume, is because it has been translated from German, right? So that's, but utility is a pretty straightforward word. So, I mean, Kant probably is saying art has no utility. I mean, that is the argument, isn't it? We are waiting on Runetoon's response on that. I say jokingly. We're going to have Runetoon actually on the Spaces next week, by the way. While we're on the subject of Runetoon, put out a beautiful show together in Omaha, Nebraska. The home of Warren Buffett, as they say. So thank you for the quote. Very helpful, actually. And finally, just the community here, which is growing nicely. I'm excited to see. I've started realizing I need to put on latest, not top, in case you haven't seen your work being shown here. So Toro, would love to share this new collection on Zora, GM. They're all drawing paintings on napkins scanned and processed. Look how beautiful they are. So super cool. That's on Zora from Toro. Here's Rocco. Hi, Pocobelli and fellow artists. I'd like to share my most recent collection, Killing Me Softly, 5 unique pieces telling a story about the dehumanization of Web3 and NFT culture. More about the works in the link below. Yeah, fries, bullets, money, and maybe some antidepressants here. Interesting. Yeah, like we're online here. I like to tell people who are not on X or Twitter, Twitter's the real world. Like if you say like it's not like sheltered or whatever, like it's kind of like it's like the rough real world. It's kind of what I like about it, to be honest. For all of its difficulty and culturally where you can be like, oh God, right? But for all, but it's real. It feels very real. Juan Pez, Clara. So here, a beautiful, what looks like a physical work. That's on Object. Thank you for posting. And Necrosphere posting an interesting cartoon here, almost like a Pokemon type cartoon here with some digital drawing. And finally C, Carlos, as much as we try, most things can't be tied in a bow. I gotta believe that's okay. Well put. To me, this is almost a kind of homage of sorts to Platonism, which is not systematic. The only system really is that there is no system. Dialectic is basically, back and forth conversation is basically, there is no system, famously. So that's why I like it. That's why it's kind of, one could argue, there's kind of an eternal aspect to it. So I'm very sympathetic to this comment. And Remycelium. Abre, Sorcier, Lizard, we'll do a very quick look here. Sorcier, which is, of course, sorcerer, or I think we'd call sorcerer or witch in French. Look at that. Beautiful. Interesting combination. Oil pastels, felt pen, digital painting, photography, collages. Super interesting. And Ernesto Ash, I think we saw this last episode, some beautiful abstracts. Indeed, we did. Evelyn. So thank you for the comments. I'm glad you liked the outrage rant on Kant. Always a new adventure here every episode. In my opinion, so adding to the discussion here, what disqualifies Kant is that he thought nature was the only thing we truly could determine being beautiful. That's interesting. Like, so more stuff I didn't know about Kant. Art is human-made. Common, what is this? The 1700s? It sounds too rooted in religion. I don't buy it. Yeah, there's something very almost ideological, ironically, because as far as I understood, he was kind of more, in the tradition of Aristotle, which is more based on looking at the world. Remember the Raphael's room, the School of Athens, with Aristotle pointing down and Plato pointing up, right? Ideal or the world of ideas, whereas Aristotle kind of going like this, the worlds first. And Kant, I always understood as being kind of an echo of Aristotle for the 18th century or the Enlightenment, or 19th century, I guess. Late 18th, early 19th. So, yeah, so again, maybe it's not one of his strongest areas. He was trying to put together, one could argue, a whole system of thought based on, and I should probably speed up this show so we don't run into issues, but based on, I think, thinking alone. How far can thinking take us? To his credit. And it sounds like he got pretty far with that, or at least did something interesting. So interesting comments. Just final point on this. As far as my understanding, and actually we're going to see this in a second, Aristotle, so art improves on nature is another way of seeing art and its relationship to nature. Art as an improvement on nature, and the classic example that you might get, maybe not anymore, it's probably not the best PC example, but would be, say, makeup, for example, right? Okay, makeup making someone look even more beautiful, let's say, and so for the sake of argument, right? So that would be art improving on nature within that example. Right? They probably use different examples. Now just finally here, I didn't want to be too hard on romanticism. And there was this great line on that I remembered from Goethe, which is, and here it is, down here. Let me just show you. Ach Gott, die Kunst ist lang und kurz ist unser Leben. Art is long, but our lives are short. And our lives are short. Ah, God, art is long, and our lives are short. Wolfgang von Goethe. Interestingly, and I was just kind of looking at this on my own, and I guess it's based on actually Latin, vita brevis, life is brief, art is long. And interestingly, it has here, and actually this is in, let me just fix this into, so we're going to translate, this doesn't exist in the English version of Wikipedia, but here it is. This actually comes from Hippocrates. Weirdly, he is in Corpus Hippocraticum, handed down in a huge library of the early medical texts. And here it is. The original reads Techne, and you see Techne there, T-E, and then kind of Kne. The N being like a E accent aigu. The term art is translated as Techne or ars, and then they translated it back. Anyways, I don't want to get too lost on this. But maybe we can get the final translation here. Yeah, okay, I guess we might have to just let this... Here it is. Here it is. I want to bring this up, though. And in this sentence of Techne, using Techne is long, it's defined as teaching or knowing action-oriented rules. That's how Techne is being defined, as it is still used today in Heilkunst. So whatever that's getting to. So just kind of interesting, just giving a little bit of background. Again, I think Techne, I'm kind of back to Techne. After this whole discussion on Kant, I'm kind of back to Techne. And I also think this is worth looking at here. In ancient Greek philosophy, Techne, as you see here, art, skill, craft, is a philosophical concept that refers to making or doing, as we were discussing a couple episodes ago. Today, while the ancient Greek definition of Techne is similar to the modern definition and use of practical knowledge, interestingly, Techne can include various fields such as mathematics, geometry, medicine, shoemaking, rhetoric, philosophy, music, and astronomy. One of the definitions of Techne led by Aristotle, for example, or art, is a state involving true reason concerned with production. And I'm kind of back to almost a process, one might say, in the context of a fine artist. Now here you don't see art mentioned, do you? Or painting. But it does come up here, history of the term. Many ancient Greek philosophers, such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, had difficulty coming up with a single definition for Techne. So our problem that we're looking at is not new at all. And there's differentiation between the ways that these philosophers use the term. The word Techne comes from the Greek word for art, skill, craft, and technique. The modern-day English word technology comes from the prefix techne and the suffix ology. Both words are of Greek origin, combined to mean, quote, the practical application of knowledge. You could argue, like Santiago, one could argue within this context, is putting together a kind of technology of sorts. That's almost what we're doing as artists when we come together with a process that works and gives us certain kinds of somewhat consistent results. We're coming up with a kind of technology. We are artists. I'm kind of back to this is a lot simpler. This is more my speed here. And it continues. Both words are of Greek origin, meaning the practical application of knowledge. Techne in ancient Greece was thought of as dangerous in its virtues by many philosophers, including Plato. Arts such as painting and sculptures were particularly thought to be unvirtuous because of their third-hand representation of true reality and absolute beauty. So, of course, this is all interpretation. Of course, Plato was warning quite strongly against poetry and the arts. But when you look at his output, you could say one of the great masters of writing, let's say, and art. It's, so to speak, a poetry. In a sense, I've heard it argued, think more on a lecture, it's a kind of response to Homer. To a certain degree, what Plato's doing, we're back to this idea of playing for all the marbles. Plato was playing for all the marbles. Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, these epics kind of dominated, was the dominating, you might say, story of Greek culture. And in a sense, with the Platonic dialogues and Socrates, he's basically pulling an epic poet move, a heroic, you might say, move as a kind of response, and almost, so he kind of had it out for the poets, one could argue, like Homer. So I think that's part of where the combative polemic, you might say, from Plato, like against the arts is coming from. And I think for him, and I'm just speculating out loud here, for him to be credible in, taking down Homer, so to speak, a peg, he had to have poetry that was as good, I think, is how he's thinking about it. It only makes sense. So let's, another little aside here. Art such as painting and sculptures were particularly thought to be unvirtuous because of the third-hand representation of true reality and absolute beauty. Right, a copy of a copy. If this is reality, you do a portrait. We were talking about this in earlier episodes. It's a copy, right? And so, mimesis. Other philosophers such as Aristotle believed that Techne was virtuous, not unvirtuous like Plato, was virtuous because it uses natural materials, quote, to create objects unknown in nature, and therefore it completes nature. And we're kind of back to this idea, is kind of, again, probably not the best example of makeup, for example. So all very interesting. Okay. Now, I kind of love this comment by Dan Control, because it's kind of the exact opposite of where we're going here, which is just really basic. We are writing the future. F those who don't believe it. I love it. I actually completely, put it this way, the first half, I'm like, I actually think you're right from an artistic perspective, which is pretty exciting. If this is the case. Let's continue here. I can't believe we're at 51 minutes and we're basically a quarter through the tabs, not even. Known origin. So, of course, they shut down. They were taken over by eBay and shut down. This is very interesting. We're not going to go into the whole thing. Firstly, thanks for all the kind words over the last week about known origin after our announcement to wind down on-chain activity. We appreciate there's some uncertainty around the platform and wish to clarify our position. And it will not be instantly closing its site and will maintain reduced functionality. Our fees have been reduced to 0. Now so then they discuss IFPS, and I found this quite eye-opening and revealing. Regarding interplanetary file server, or where all the images are stored that are pointed to on the blockchain, we will continue to cover pinning costs, so it costs money to put works on IPFS. We will continue to cover pinning costs for the next 2 years. Again, any extension or change to this will be communicated. We have seen lots of conversations around the permanence of NFTs, and we advise creators and collectors to research and understand what this means for their collections. And of course, people going to the backup NFT site, whose name is escaping me right now. Art Gnome. What is the name of there's Club NFT, I think, Club NFT. Where you can back up your NFTs. So I don't know where it backs up to, somewhere else on the cloud. I'm back to the physical, weirdly. We don't know where any of this leads, including ordinals and Bitcoin, as was pointed out. I'm kind of back to make sure you're making physical work, doing physical iterations of your work. Rob, formerly from Foundation, but now I think just freelancing as far as I know. I highly encourage artists now more than ever because of significantly lower gas fees to make sure their art is fully on chain. And so you can do this on Ethereum. You remember Spiegels, Meskinen, putting these small little files together on Ethereum. I posted about the mempool. I mean, it was at 4. I haven't seen it at 4 forever. And I'm going to do a video on this. I keep saying, it's at 5 in the mempool. And look at this, the way you read it, and I'll get into this in a video, I think, right away. You see the last block? It minted at 4. I mean, this is really, really cheap. Like, I think it might even be less than 50 cents a kilobyte. Like, it's getting cheap. I'm not sure how kilobytes really measure to V-bytes. I think it's almost similar, but not exactly. Anyways, let's continue. There is this. So a lot of you have gotten invites. I feel this is my take on when I go to a site and I see join the waitlist. I don't like it. I don't want to be a part of anything with a waitlist anymore. I don't feel like this is the market. We're not in 2021. And Zora, whom I love, I downloaded their app finally, and it's like, okay, here I go. I take time out of my day to download the app, and it's like, okay, and join the waitlist in one day. Like, I just don't think that's where we are in this market. I'm saying this to the marketing people. This whole waitlist business, like to me, this is like, it's a turnoff from a marketing perspective. Like, I just want nothing to do with it when I get this kind of stuff. I don't want invites, like, ironically. That's not why I go to crypto, so I can get invites. Okay, like I love the permissionlessness of Bitcoin. I put my art there, and until the devs take out ordinals, like that's where I'll put my art. I put on object. Nobody's saying you can do it or you can't do it. So this whole like trying to create like this fear of missing out, like I am just like so not into this marketing strategy in 2024. It's 2021. I think it would have worked fabulously, and maybe I'm sure I would have gotten swept up in the FOMO. I don't think that's where we are anymore. I'm more speaking to marketing department people than anything. So Dan Control putting some work up on Rodeo, 23 minted. Now, we also saw Sabato, but I mean, it sounds like you're making, like I guess it's a similar thing to Zora. But instead of getting, say, $2 or $3 for the fee, you're getting like, I think it's 34 cents. I don't know if it's on base or if it's on a different, but you're getting 34 cents. So, and then that gets split into two. So you're basically getting 17 cents per mint. And the fact that this has no maximize on it is another red flag. Because then it's like, is this about the art? Right? There's no maximize. Like, I have to do this. And why can't I maximize? It's not that it's not big enough, as we just saw. So, so as it was pointed out to me, this is great for collectors. It's not really that great for artists. So, Sabato, your art should be worth more. And so, totally agree. Made this in 3 minutes. Considering the 6 minutes I'll get with this, post will be net me about $1. This work was made at a rate of, because this is the thing. The reason why people use Zora, the secret sauce, is they actually, when you divide up, you get 100 mints. They have that huge community there, and you're getting a couple of bucks a mint, let's say. Like, that's real money, $150, $200. That's why people go to Zora. It reminds me of the super rare John. Why do people go to Tezos and Object? Because they actually get something for their art. So if you're going to start a platform, not to be too hard on these guys, I mean, just, again, my personal thoughts as an artist, if you're going to start a platform and then you don't pay the artists, like, I mean, how is this supposed to work? Like, what's the plan here? There's not even a maximize on here, so what is this about? Labor theory of value. So in other words, labor takes time and it's money. This one may have taken 5 minutes. So a little bit of satire from Sabato. Drew Lacreme, no, I do not want to go to the rodeo. Hilariously. Rob, back to Rob from previously from Foundation, but now on his freelancing. I'm ready for the free mint meta to be over. Again, with Zora, what I kind of like about Zora is they can call it a free mint. And for all intents and purposes, even if you're paying $3 for the mint, for all intents and purposes on Ethereum, it's basically free, like for all intents and purposes. And then so with that kind of dynamic at work, then you start getting, $1.50, $2 a mint. That's okay. And then you get 100 people. And they, I really believe Zach when he says over at Zora, he's trying to help artists get money. And I think he's proven that. Over and over again. And that's why artists continue to mint at Zora, as far as I can tell. I haven't done it for a while, so I'll have to try that, Zora. And but I mean, do I have excitement to go on Rodeo? Like, maybe as a collector to pick up pieces for nothing, like, or 17 or 35 cents. But as an artist, I mean, what's the point? Anyways, let's continue. If folks really want to collect your work, then they should pay the price to own it. If they don't collect it, then so be it. Ultimately, those who really value your work won't mind paying for it anyways. That's right. And it's so cheap to begin with on Object, or Zora. I mean, do we need to get it cheaper than that? I don't think so. I think it's fine. As a collector, even, like, I think it's cheap enough. We don't need to get it to 17 cents for the artist. Woman, convince artists to give their art away for pennies, collect fees, show tons of volume and transactions on your platform. Platform gets funded, artist starves. So almost suggesting there's a VC component. Yeah, and I just go, this may work for you in the short term, and we're almost back to the crypto culture. But long term, why would artists mint there? Like, it's that simple. Why do people not use super rare as much? Because they weren't making as much money. Look at what happened with who we started with here, Santiago. Santiago gets a surprise sale on superware, and it makes it worth, okay, maybe we should all be minting on super rare again. Look at the sale that Santiago made, and what does he do? He posts another work right away. So this is how you get artists to post work, is they get paid. It works for them, right? So, and why didn't, I assume he didn't post a ton, or at least maybe not in his case, but there wasn't a ton of minting going on that I could see. There is, on super rare. Why? Because there weren't as many sales. People would put on foundation even, right, over super rare. So let's continue. Tukes, the reason I'm not doing Zora or Rodeo right now is that I actually need the money from selling my art to survive. I'm looking for collectors who really love what I do and are willing to support my career because they genuinely enjoy my work. And you know what another problem with, let's say, an open mint, it's 34 cents, is people can literally mint like 1,000, so to speak. So then where's the collectability? And then they paid like what, $340 for 1,000, or $34 for 100. So if you actually do have something that's collectible, it's not exactly collectible when you sell it that low. It's too low in a sense from a collectability point of view. Check this out too. I think this is super interesting. Ranixtier. This post is out of control. 70 mints in the last few minutes for Ranixtier for a photo. And again, I think this is like $140, let's call it, for the sake of argument. $140. I'm just kind of guessing out loud here. That's real money, right, for a photograph. So you see, so it's Zora is, like, what I'd say to Tukes is Zora is a different story from art financial perspective. I don't know if Tukes is minted there or not, but I think it's worth, actually in Tukes' case, I'd say it's worth trying. Because there's actually, look at Ranixtier. 70 mints, maybe $150, I'm guessing, maybe more, on a photo. Very nice photo. Drew Lacreme. We're at an hour. My God. The object.com referrals could be the next big catalyst for crypto art adoption. Imagine any big board influence. Yeah, there could be something to this. So, of course, referrals, I'm seeing it. It's actually quite powerful, what I'm seeing online. People collect, and then they just hit share, and then which object.com puts up, and then all of a sudden they just make it very easy. You just hit the button, and then it goes to your social media, and then whoever clicks on that, you get the referral. It's quite smart. They've kind of hit the execution there, the brilliant web people at Object. So interesting. Xcopy made a thing, minted it. Anyone can do this. Long live crypto. So keeping it simple. Keeping it very simple, and it's kind of good to remember this. Mikey de la Creme, collecting statistics, almost 10,000 artworks, 10,000 editions from 2,000, almost 2,000 artists, 1,700 artists, to different artists. Sold 2,000, currently owns 7,500 artworks, 8,000 editions. Average 8.63 artworks per day. Active days, 1,085. Like, if there's a Hall of Fame in this scene, surely Mikey de la Creme is in the first, wave of people. Sky Goodman, I love Tezos the best. That is all. Again, bringing it back to the simplicity here. Danielle King. Honored to have my work shown on 300 plus screens in Melbourne, Australia earlier this summer. Thank you, Art Crush Gallery. Looks pretty awesome, doesn't it? Very nicely. I quite like the how they show the QR code and the artist's name. This is it's a very nice presentation, isn't it? So very interesting. Ed Marola, should I try more physical art? And I would say yes, definitely. Definitely. And look at how good this looks. I'm not sure if this is like when Rare puts the painting in a theoretical gallery or if this is real. This is fakewhale.xyz Instagram, but look at how good this work looks in a gallery, whether this is fake or not. This work looks spectacular. So again, Inigo, good work. Where's the physical Inigo? That's what I want to know. Ken A, very cool, sweet, surreal. So we've looked at this artist before. Again, you just see the power of print, right? So interesting. Interesting. Like, because again, I think I'm not sure, maybe we saw NFTs of physicals, and that's in high fructose. Congratulations to Ken A. Jack Kenna. Very cool. Polygon 1993, Phantasm card gaming soon, or Phantasm card game coming soon. Again, just kind of almost another physical iteration here of art, potentially. And my certificate of authenticity. So Polygon 1993, keeping things interesting as ever. Continuing on, finally to the works. This is ridiculous. Next week, I really am. I'm gonna just do a complete hatchet job on these tabs because we can't keep going like this. Rat Cloaksy, so was. So beautiful work here by Rat Cloak. Again, going with this interesting, almost like black fluid, almost looks like a bonsai tree. This thick, almost oil-like sludge, right? A couple of different brushes seemingly being used here. Interesting. And then the face disintegrating. Nice, actually, combination of kind of what looks like kind of a oil stick with a paintbrush in the shirt. And then this beautiful technique of combining colors. Very nice work here. And let's just see here. And of course, using this oil stick over top of the brush, the digital brush here, and we just see the power of the contrast, right? In those words over top of the painting. So was Rat. So not exactly sure where these are going. They seem quite dark. It's almost like a sneeze, but not sure. So was edition of 1 for 200 Tezos from Rat Cloak. And you can see here, these last three seem to have almost a bit, especially the last two, seem to be, and I'm pretty sure we did look at this one already, but you see there's a clear kind of relationship between these two works. And here's another one, but without so much of the black fluid, but same kind of wild, lower kind of compositional focus over here. Definitely has its own feel, the great Rat Cloak. Here's the myth on Zora. So cool, myth minting on Zora. Very popular Zora here, 11 minted so far, 1 mask. So cool, kind of looks like a Microsoft Paint, but maybe it is Procreate with a square pixel brush, which I know Myth also uses. Da Taste, even with my wounded wings, I will fly one day. So another digital painting here, kind of a dark work here. Even with my wounded wings, I will fly one day. So wild work here. Intense work from Da Taste. Always has kind of a moving subject matter there, and there almost looks like a sea or a landscape in the background. Edition of 10 for 4 Tezos. Mikey Wilson, first on the draw. If Tezos art ever really blows up and takes off, like Mikey Wilson is going to be one of the richest people, which is going to be a wonderful moment. Should that happen. I kind of do actually think there's an inevitability to it. Yuri J, 1.5 rooms. So playing with this Tezos logo that we were seeing earlier, the mech kind of contest thing, or whatever was happening with the Tez logo, and beautiful computer here. So a very nice piece here, turned, like basically incorporated into a larger work here, turned into a chair, interestingly. And look at this great suitcase using I love his mosaic filter. I never get tired of that. Look at even the umbrella and the mirroring here, and even the drawings on the desk. It's really going somewhere, isn't it? With Yuri J. Edition of 9, sold out. And that is that. Classic Yuri J colors. Here's another one on Foundation at 0.05 ETH. The auction starts at Cottage at East Bergholt. See if it loads up. So I think we're seeing this work being made, and so we can't magnify, at least not right now. So interesting work here. Really just beautiful. Maybe we just do this. Look at this. So, I mean, the texture of a hardcore, oil painting here. I mean, look at the texture on this stuff. So it's kind of hard to dismiss this scene. I mean, when you just have the sheer amount of Techne involved in it, I mean, and a consistent, like, this isn't just like a one-off work here. So beautiful work from Yuri J. Here's the great Hasdrubal Waffle. You are the world, so I assume we are the world. Maybe who are the people here? Is this Mick Jagger? Is this maybe Tina Turner? Is that Sting? Is that Stevie Wonder, maybe? Not sure who that is. Not sure who that is. Hilarious. Kind of looks like very famous, bringing me back to my childhood. That great song, I think it was for, if I'm not mistaken, there were two. There's a Canadian one with Bryan Adams and an American one. I'm going too long here. But very moving time when artists got together to help, I believe, feed the starving people in Ethiopia. It was a beautiful moment there. Cedar Plank, also Cannonball. So more work and kind of a simpler work, interestingly. So someone jumping into the water with a shark there, interestingly. Kind of a wild one. As Ile put it, I knew your car would smell like ... And so kind of a wild, almost a symmetrical work here. Unusual, kind of nice landscapey kind of work from Hasdrubal Waffles. A lot of good, cool animations here. Cycling through, and so this went for 25 Tezos at auction. Here, a beautiful work. I don't think this is... Did we see this one? I don't think so. Maybe we did. I don't mind seeing it again. I think it came out after the show. Look at that gorgeous volcano. Wow. We talk about how nature and pixelation, that hard contrast of curvilinear and rectilinear forms, you see it right here. Fantastic work. This was a commission for Artie Hands that Zozo did, and it was cost 60 Tez. So nice price. And you see a blue dog. So really nice. Love the furniture, the off-kilter perspective. I think Artie Hands was totally thrilled with this work, as he should be. Beautiful work from Zozo again. And look at this spectacular work by Nuv 1914. Look at this. Love the composition here. You know, some going back to the roots with some flowers here, seemingly. Some sort of plant matter. And then here, this like framed painting, so to speak, of, you know, other kind of earlier kind of work of tulips. What a strange painting in the best way. You know, beautiful, beautiful. I think it's sold right away. AV collection, only 23 Tez. Nice work. Here's another one, Caballo de Salecida. Maybe kind of looks like a merry-go-round, you'd say in English. 24 Tez, still available. So interesting, playing with the teddy bears. Another theme, visual theme that you see often in Nuv 1914. And look at this kind of JPEG'd out in this hard crop. Just hilarious. Very bold artists in their experimentation. Here's Santiago Ruao. Beautiful work here called Masters. Love this work. This is one of my favorite Santiago Ruao works. Kind of reminds me in a weird way of like a Max Ernst in its own way. Masters. Very nice work. And you kind of feel like, are these the masters? These four things here? These four kind of lumps of gradients. 6 minted, that's on Zora. Very cool. From Santiago Ruao. And here is Son of Steg, who of course I follow. That is a glitch on X. And just a beautiful work here. Very interesting abstract. I think was experimenting, pushing myself into new directions. Yeah, super interesting. Son of Steg, great to hear from you. And look at Pamelo Chirone. Look at this. Beautiful work from Pamelo Chirone. I could have started the show with this brilliant, beautiful work. Really nice take on kind of this collage-y cutout sort of style. Minimal colors, just beautiful from Pamelo Chirone. Here's Boo Boy. This was posted by Super Rare's account here, A Never-Ending War by Boo Boy. And so playing with war imagery here, and we see some chips on the table, some tanks, and the war, maybe the war profiteers here perhaps, who knows. Interesting, very interesting outer margin area here, kind of drawn on. border. Very interesting border. Here's another one, Mr. Satan, Skyward. This just came out. And yeah, so a race car here in the sky. And almost looking like the buttons from a controller, interestingly, from a PlayStation controller or something. Interesting piece here from Mr. Satan, edition of 1, selling for 50 Tezos at auction to Paul, who is a ghost. Here is, and I'm not sure who this is, Juan R. Leg, Heavy Breath. Interesting animated illustration here. Kind of surreal, isn't it? Nice kind of gradients in the background, nice texture and everything. Just kind of interesting. Heavy Breath. This is a free mint available for, I think, quite a while more, another 179 days. Let's keep zooming here. Maybe we can finish in 90 minutes today. Very cool. Color. Very, very cool. This kind of scrunched down, transformed, basically, Apple IIe. But with a mouse. Maybe it's an Apple II. I don't remember there being a mouse. We had a joystick. And interesting, you see Adobe Photoshop. Maybe this is a Mac, but it kind of looks like an Apple II. Anyways, I am getting confused here. Maybe it's a Mac, early Mac. Very cool work here. Sold for 0.17 ETH. Nice sale from Color. That's on Foundation. Beautiful work. And you might remember them from this work here. Which are the two watches, the expensive Rolex and the Casio. That sold for 0.2. So yeah, doing quite well there. Beautiful work. Here is Walk, Charmander. This is an edition of 1. It is at auction for 7 Tezos. Interesting to see these, the longer you're here, the higher the prices get. Very cool. Probably a few bidders. Look at all the bidders here. There's Lagojo. Awesome. Trying to get a cheap walk. Awesome. Cap'n, also known as Figments. Glitching Hour at Crater Lake. I mean, another work that could have started this show. I mean, we just started with Captain the other day. Look at how beautiful this is. This landscape. This minimal landscape. And that awesome moon of horizontal pixels. Just rad. Edition of 16. Looks sold out at 8 Tezos. Nice work. And this is on Rodeo from Cap'n. Beautiful. Work here, 63 minted, so maybe that turns into like $7 or $8, maybe more, maybe $12. Okay, so interestingly, so Cap'n trying some stuff out on Rodeo. Here's Kristen Roos, Color Bars. So Kristen Roos continuing. This is the third of this series here. So very cool series from Kristen Roos. Investigation into red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. GIF, edition of 15, 20 Tezos, already selling 5. And here, speaking of physical, weaving designs in progress. This is also Kristen Roos. So here is one way to turn your work physical. See this weaving? Like these are thread. This is thread, as far as I can tell here. Like here, if you can see that. Maybe I just try this in this overextended episode. Yeah, I think we'll just leave it there. That's as big as it goes. So weaving from Kristen Roos, it continues. Datura, Contre Courant 001. So new work. This is on Rodeo. This is an edition of 14. So cool animated abstract. Here's Xcopy, and I think these are newer works. Zombo, a couple of newer works here from Xcopy, I think, who, of course, we saw in the earlier comment that we were highlighting there. I minted on the blockchain and all is well, basically. So beautiful work here, actually. So kind of a heavier pixelation. You see like square brush seems to be used, all sorts of stuff. And then you see kind of the trademark, I'd say, kind of flashing eyes glitch. You see it here too, Shmashtla. So again, almost like I'm pretty familiar, I want to say, with this kind of, it's almost using a fill tool. Magic Wand style. One of my favorite tools, the Magic Wand. And so interesting. Very interesting. We saw some works, I think, like a year and a half ago come out in a series like this. These ones are more pixelated, if they are in fact new, and I think they are. So this is on Manifold. Shall we see how many are minted in this ridiculously long episode here? How many? 44, but it's 0.1 ETH. So bringing in 4.4 ETH though. Oh, and you need to burn. Wow. So you have to burn this older one. Wow, interesting. Burn to redeem. Interesting, interesting. John Cates, I just horse traded with Sechu the Artie for this beautiful glitch horses. And agreed, John. This is beautiful. Beautifully pixelated. I'm not sure. It's on objects somewhere. Really nice piece. Pixelation and glitch. I'm starting to see more and more in John Cates and surrounding artists' work. It's an interesting combo. Pixelation and glitch. Here is Manadal. Meow Runners have been experimenting with some very small resolutions, very low resolutions. Very nice piece here. And here is Hermipe pixel art with a beautiful pixel art work here. And I don't think they're on the blockchain. So again, just really interesting pixel art over there on Instagram. Be it Blue Screen of Death. So here's another take on it. Open edition, 40 Tezos cents. Very nice piece. And I'm going to speed through here. Green Ginger, A Short Escape. I don't want this episode to not register to my computer. It's happened before. Green Ginger, new pixel artwork. It's beautiful. And here is perfectloop.tez, Binworm. And as you see here, just a great, the window is eating all the files in space there. Very cool. Here is Silva Santus. And here you see the solar system in slow motion, if I have that right. Very slow motion here, unless that's my computer. Interesting piece, 3 minted so far. And here, Glitchtown Arcades celebrating the start of the Olympics, Paris 2024. Awesome piece. Could have started with this one too. Thought about it. Very cool work here. Edition of 50 for only 1 Tezos. Awesomely done. Here's Sabato, Blue Gia, 3D GLB model 2024. This is an edition of 1 for 777 Tezos. And you see the animal, which Cupacabra, I think you call it, that Sabato always puts in his work. Looks like a car. Very cool glitch. Chupacabra, yeah, so capybara. It's a capybara. Edition of 1, 777 Tezos. Psychofuturist, The Pain of the Sun in My Eye. Very interesting piece again from Psychofuturist. Kind of mystical looking work. Here's Renki Momoyama. So another cool work here, playing with the frame a little bit, interestingly. And here is a glitch work, Nebula Descent. We'll just do a touch from Jada. Really nice, kind of warm, heavy textures and analog video textures here from Jada. Is that an edition of 1 for 36 Tezos? These are all good sales. Like, it's good to sell your work. You post it, it sells. I mean, Bosque Gracias, Emotional Tunnel to be Ocean Waves. So a video kind of animated abstract. This one goes for 1.5 minutes, but as you can see here, just to give you a taste of what it's like. So 17 minted so far. Here's No Hygiene background. So 40 Tezos. So wild, wild AI art. Again, just pushing what is aesthetically basically acceptable, like really pushing the frontiers of aesthetics. Let's put it that way. Very interesting work from No Hygiene. Here's another. This one's sold. Sold. I think big thanks to Kigo Gauda. I think you pronounce that. So I think this went for 30, if I'm not mistaken. Awesome. Beautiful work. Here's Santiago, who we opened the show with, a couple of AI artworks, who, of course, I follow. Beautiful, just again, this kind of big, almost Murakami-style manga AI works. Just another series from Santiago. These are really powerful works here. If they're made physical and put in a gallery and like painted, like huge, it'd be amazing. Sam Octagon, 46 by 65 acrylic painting on paper. And here you can just see an interesting painting in progress from Sam Octagon. And here is Luciana Guerra, who of course I follow. And here just some beautiful work. My little daughter's 6, so I bring the studio to my home. Sorry to hear that. I hope she gets well soon. And here, just look at how great this work looks in person. Here, as we go into the physicals, continue the physicals, Kayla Mattis. So this is more woven work here. Are you okay? Playing with memes. So just very cool work again from Kayla Mattis. And here, Sean Hamilton. Very cool piece from It's Not a Gallery. Look at this. Very kind of interesting, precise drawing with chains. Another really cool Noah Verrier, my oil painting of McDonald's. Beautiful, smart, just really cool, beautifully executed. Here's Bobbich, Mattia, the Wreck, charcoal and acrylic on unprimed canvas. So working with unprimed canvas and probably getting these great textures as a result. Here's Andrew Park, also from It's Not Gallery, super edgy physical work, Dollar Memories. Don't think we've seen this one. Edgy work. Kind of reminds you of No Hygiene a little bit. Matias La Plata, who of course I follow. So just a cool drawing from Matias La Plata. And here is Die With The Most Likes, a very nice painting, kind of a smaller one. They're powerful, getting really good at the painting. Nameless Dread Endures. And here is Joao Salazar, who of course I follow. Selfie series available on Exchange. So almost doing like a GIF, breaking down a GIF into several frames is what it looks like, but physical. Very cool. And here is Demon Ego's creating process, deciding to put the creating process onto Rodeo, and 19 minted so far. That's your show, everyone, at an hour 25. Thank you. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining me this far if you made it. Until next time, take care.